Hey girl, my name is Anel. Welcome to the Brave in Her podcast, where we inspire, empower, and motivate by sharing our stories of bravery. I strongly believe that by sharing our stories, we open ourselves to healing, but also serve to give hope and inspiration to those who are dealing with a tough situation. We will talk about all topics under the sun. Now let's hear your stories of bravery. Hey girl, thank you for being here for today's episode. In today's episode, I have Megan Eddinger. She is the host of Unlocking Your Ambition. And she's here to talk to us about her experience of being a teen mom. But first of all, welcome, Megan. Thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm so excited.
I'm excited that you're here and, for you to share your journey. I'm sure it wasn't easy being a teen mom. And thank you for being brave and speaking up about your experience. But first, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself so we know a little bit about you?
Sure. So a little bit about me. Obviously, you already mentioned I was a teen mom. So I got pregnant with my first child when I was 17, so a senior in high school. Since then, I have gone on to marry his dad, my high school sweetheart. We've got two more kids. Right now, they are almost 17, 13, and 12. So it's been a while now. And that's kind of just my background. And I'm sure we'll get into a little bit more here in just a bit.
Yeah, great. So do you want to just get right into it and tell us what was it like to be a teen mom? What was your experience, your journey being a teen mom? Like, how old were you, and what was it like?
Sure. Well, just like anything else, everybody's experience is going to be a little bit different. For me, it was very lonely. I graduated high school 6 or 7 months pregnant. So all of my friends were leaving for college, going away for school, going to prom, all of those types of things. Whereas I was going to work to earn money so that I could provide for a baby. Back then there was no social media. So we were not like keeping in touch on Facebook or Instagram or anything like that, like we have access to now. And so for me, that journey was really lonely. Around the same time, my mom, I'm the oldest of 5. So my mom and all of my siblings moved to a different state, and I chose to stay with my boyfriend and his family. So I was living with a new family I called my mom, obviously, but it was different than, being around your mom. Just really no friends. So I was trying to navigate this new season of my life, thinking that I knew things. But I mean, when you're 17, what do you really know? Like, think back to when you were 17 and what you thought you knew about the world, and then versus what the world is really like, right? So lots of learning curves. And again, just lots of feeling like I was really alone.
Yeah. And that's a lot of changes. You went from, being a teen, careless or carefree or however you want to say it. And then going from that to now being responsible for a baby and, not being around your, like you say, your mom, and, in the time that you needed her the most.
Yeah. And so I would primarily stay with my boyfriend and his family. And then I would drive, the few hours to stay with my mom just to get some of that connection with her. And for the, emotional support there. And so that went on for quite a while until I finally, settled in with my boyfriend and stayed there. But I mean, it's hard having a baby just in general, right? But then when it's, 2:00 in the morning and the baby is screaming, crying, and you're waking up the whole house. And, my boyfriend's dad, my father-in-law now, he would come down and he would be like, do you want me to take the baby? And I would be like, no, because I felt like that was something that I had to do. I thought that moms didn't get help like that. Right. And especially from a man who wasn't the baby's father. So it was like a very strange dynamic, even though he was happy to do it. He wanted to support me. He could see that I was like upset and frustrated too. It was just very different, I think.
Yeah, but that's awesome that at least you had that support that I don't know if you felt like alone, but at least it was him as offering his help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I should definitely clarify that. I had an amazing, amazing support system. So both of our families were incredibly supportive. Like I mentioned, we were able to stay with them. They offered, that help in the middle of the night and those types of things. So we definitely wouldn't be where we are today without their support. It was just that like lack of connection with peers. So I didn't have like the friends that I had grown up with. And I also didn't have a support system of other moms who had kids the same age. And that really still is true today because I am so much younger than all of the other moms. I really just don't have a lot in common with them. And most often when I'm out with my oldest, people just assume that we're like siblings or that I'm his aunt or something, along those lines. So finding mom friends that are experiencing similar things with their kids remains to be a challenge for me.
Yeah, because now you're like in your 30s, right? Like mid 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
you already have a 17-year-old kid, like almost, he just started college, right? Or he or she?
That's okay. He's going to be a senior in high school this year. So we're
Okay.
looking at colleges for him now. We did a tour I mentioned last Friday, which went really well. And so again, that's a whole new experience because I didn't go to college right after high school, right? My husband and I did night school, after a year or two of settling into jobs. So this is a new experience just for us in general. And then additionally, for our kids. So again, not having that guidance or that community of other people who are going through the same thing is a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, what is it like to like in these college tours where it's more than just your kid going to tour the college, right? And you see other parents. Like, what is it like to go and you being like the youngest one?
Yeah. I don't think I'll ever get used to it. When he was a little bit younger, he was on a soccer team and I would like run the track when he was at practice. So all the other parents would sit on like the bleachers and then I would just go for a run for an hour. And it was great back then because everybody just assumed I was his sister. So nobody ever came to me asking for like money for any of the fundraisers or anything like that. But now it's a little bit like, you get into these conversations in those types of settings and it's like, oh, you're his mom. Wow, you look so young. And it's like, then I have to make a decision. Like, do I explain myself or do I just say like, yeah, oh yeah, I have good genes or, it's awkward.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that's a little awkward. Like, I mean, I don't know if you don't think, not that you don't think, but like you don't have to really explain to anybody like what happened. But yeah, I've never heard of like, oh, it feels awkward, that you're just much younger and you just feel like that need, or you're debating whether to explain or to kind of like give a white lie, like, oh, I just
Right.
good genes, or having to explain that you're really young when you had your kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean it's one of those things. It's almost, I compare it to like weight, right? Like if someone is thin, you think that you can comment on their weight where you wouldn't otherwise. Whereas this is the same thing. Like I would never walk up to someone and be like, "Oh, you're so old. I never thought that you were their parent," right?
Yeah.
But people, because it's the reverse, people think that they can comment on it. It's a very funny dynamic.
Yeah. And if you don't mind me asking, how old were you when you had your kid?
Yep. So I had him just 2 weeks before my 18th birthday.
Okay.
So that was another thing because we were like, are you going to be 18 or are you not? Because there are different forms and like different procedures at the hospital if I was not going to be 18. So thank good, I was, so that wasn't a problem, but it was stressful.
So what do you mean about the, being 18 or not 18?
Mm-hmm. So if you're not 18, you are a minor, right? So
Okay.
making medical decisions is someone else's responsibility. And again, this was, 17 years ago, so things might have changed by now, but um, like there was a different wing of the hospital where I was located for pediatric pregnancies
Oh,
versus yes, yes. Um, and so the experience I think would have been just really very different. And honestly, the treatment I think in the hospital because I was young was different. People make assumptions about like the kind of home that you come from or the kind of relationship that you have with the father. I think that it's subtle but noticeable.
okay. So you felt like they treated you differently just because you were so young,
Mm-hmm.
and pregnant and, having a baby.
Yeah, definitely.
So they just assumed that you didn't have a good relationship with your boyfriend back then, or the, baby father, just because you were just young.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy to me. And it's crazy to me that just because you're 18 or, 2 weeks shy of being 18, um, but you're pregnant, you cannot make any medical decisions.
Yeah, so I think if I remember correctly, it was just like extra forms that my mom would have had to fill out. So we would have had to make sure that she was there. I mean, obviously they would have treated me either way, but
Right.
legally there was additional paperwork that she would have had to complete.
That's crazy. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
My sister, she also had her baby when she was, I think, 19. Yeah, but she was pregnant like literally right after high school, and then had her
Hmm.
baby at 19. But yeah, I I guess because she didn't experience what you experienced of being like 18 or not 18. I didn't know that was happening.
Yeah.
Crazy. So what has been one of like the hardest things about being a teen mom?
I would say by far the hardest thing about being so young when you start having a family is I did not have that chance to explore myself and get to know myself before I started to put someone else's needs before my own. And so, what that resulted in was, when I was in seasons of stress, I didn't know I hadn't developed like my own coping mechanisms. Right. And
Right.
so, I think that and obviously again everyone's situation is very different but I think if I had the opportunity to understand myself and my own needs a little bit better and had more of a like a foundational relationship with my husband we would have saved ourselves a lot of aggravation and a lot of conflict in those earlier years.
Yeah, because even if you had a really great support system, you still were fully responsible for this baby. So like you said,
Mm-hmm.
you didn't put yourself first, you put the baby first for so many years until finally now I'm assuming now you're able to take care of yourself, but you learn later, right? As opposed to like being a regular teen, you know, being done with high school, moving on to college, and all you focus is on you.
Mm-hmm.
Your
Yeah,
school, your
exactly.
work, or whatever you do. When you go to college, and but you're not responsible for anyone else but yourself.
Exactly. Exactly. And those experiences, even just, getting your first job, relationships with other people, whether it's, other girlfriends or other romantic relationships. I think that every person that you interact with and every relationship that you have is a learning opportunity. And I missed out on a lot of learning opportunities. And so not necessarily that I missed out, but just that I had to learn those things as I was also caring for other people, which just made it extra challenging, I think.
Yeah. Or those things came later.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was one of the positive things about having a baby so early?
Yeah. So I would say by far the biggest positive that we've seen is just, our energy is usually a lot higher than other parents of some of our kids' friends. And that's just because we're, 10 to 15 years younger than a lot of them. And so it's funny because you always compare yourself to someone else's position, right? And so their friends' parents will say to us like, oh, it's so great that you can do, this or that with your kids. I wish I had your energy. You guys were so lucky that you're so young. And, we used to look at them and think, yeah, but we're poor. Like we can't do anything. We can't go anywhere. We can't go out to eat. So it's just funny how different people perceive, the benefits and the pros and cons of when you have your family.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. Like you could be young, but have all the energy. And then, like you said, like be broke, or you can be older and not be broke, but not have the energy. So it's kind of like, okay, would you rather have the energy or would you rather have money?
Right.
Yeah. Pretty cool. how that works out, right? So I mentioned earlier that you have a podcast, Unlocking Your Ambition. What is your podcast? Sorry, what is your podcast? I can't even speak right now. What is your podcast about?
Yeah. So Unlocking Your Ambition is sort of a passion project of mine. Again, I mentioned a little bit earlier that I found myself feeling very alone in my journey with motherhood. And so I wanted to provide a space where people feel safe to talk about like all of the things that come along with being a mom that you won't find on Pinterest or Instagram or, any of those things. Another big part of my story is I suffer with anxiety and depression. And that is something that a lot of moms especially struggle with, and no one talks about it. And so bringing all of that kind of stuff and bringing those conversations to light has been so rewarding to me, really. The amount of people that have reached out and just shared, their own experiences and making connections and just letting me know that the podcast makes them feel normal. Like they thought that they were crazy, but now they know that they're not. And it's, the things that they're experiencing and the things that they're feeling are really very normal. Even if it is something that you need to go and get help with professionally, it doesn't make you any less normal than, the mom who lives next door.
Yeah. And even probably the mom next door is probably feeling some kind of sort of way that, the same way as you are, right? And
exactly.
By you bringing it up and talking about it and being open about it, then opens the door for other moms to also be open about it.
Yeah. I mean, depending on, who you are and what kind of circle you're in, the closest people to you might not even be sharing, what they're really experiencing because they feel ashamed or like they're not normal. And so, even growing up, like we never talked about our feelings in my house. It was just, life was just the way that it is. And, we didn't really have those types of conversations. And now, like, we do have those conversations. And I think the world is just a different place now. It's become a safer place to have those kinds of conversations. But I think there are still a lot of families and a lot of people who just they won't have the conversation, but they will listen to a podcast.
Yeah. Because again, I think it goes back to the, I guess, I don't know if this stereotype is the correct word, but it goes back to that mentality where, moms can do it all, and moms cannot complain because, women can handle everything, can be a mom, can, just do everything without complaining. And, basically kind of saying like moms cannot have feelings. But the reality is the complete opposite, right?
Yeah.
You know, any feelings that you feel is like they're valid, you know?
Yeah. And it's so funny. Like one of my favorite things is, chatting with the other moms on the soccer field. Like my daughter is, she's on a travel soccer team and she's going to middle school next year. So she's at, that preteen age where, there's lots of hormones coming through.
Yeah.
There's, attitudes. They're starting to become more independent. And so there's lots of opportunities for a lot of conflict between, especially moms and their daughters at this age. And I love listening and talking to the other moms about their experiences, because sometimes you look at someone and you just think that they're just always super calm and really happy, and their kids are always, in matching outfits, and everyone just gets along, and it's like, always unicorns in their house. And then you really get to know them and it's like, oh no, you scream at your kids on the way to school too sometimes. Like everyone,
Yeah.
it makes you feel like, oh, I thought I was the only one that did that, but your house gets kind of crazy too. It makes you feel better.
Totally. Yeah, because I mean, I'm not I'm a stepmom. I'm not she's not my biological kid, but sometimes when I have to raise my voice or whatever, like sometimes I feel guilty, but then like when I talk to other moms, they're like, "Oh yeah, I do that too." And I'm like, "You do?" And it's like, okay, it's kind of normal, like it's not you being like a crazy person, it's like it's normal because kids can get on your nerves sometimes.
Yeah. But it's so funny to me how we know people in the context that we know them. Right. And so, of course, sitting on the sidelines of a soccer field and my interactions with these women, I would never imagine them like yelling or getting frustrated, because they're not getting frustrated with me in the same ways. Right. So getting to know like that other side of someone is really interesting.
Yeah. And it helps to feel like less of that mom guilt. Like, I'm not a terrible mom, or I'm not crazy or whatever, like, how you said earlier. It becomes like, okay, normal, because other moms, are going through the same thing too.
Yeah. And especially, I mean, I'm sure, moms today have so much on their plate and so much pressure, right? Because many of us are working full time. Many of us, have more than one child. Everything is on social media. So not only do you have like your own pressures that you put on yourself because of, trying to live up to, you know, be the mom that your mom was to you, or, whatever that dynamic is. But you're also constantly reminded of all the great things that everyone else is doing, and feeling guilty that you're not providing those same opportunities to your kids. And it's like, we have to stop, because again, you don't know what else is going on in that house. Like maybe they're on like this amazing Hawaiian vacation this week, and they do that every year. And how the hell do they have that much money? And why do they look so happy on that beach? But maybe they don't ever see each other at all the rest of the year, because they have to work crazy hours to be able to afford something like that. You know what I mean? You just never know all the details of someone else's story.
Or even being on vacation, and the only time they were actually together was to take that picture.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, social media could be a good thing, but it could also be a bad thing. And I don't think we should be focusing so much on what other people are doing on social media, it's easier said than done because we've all been through that, the comparison stage where we're comparing ourselves to other people in many different areas, not just, mom, but if you own a small business or if you have a podcast or like, if you have a podcast, like how come this person has all these downloads and I'm barely on this or whatever, right? But it's true, like you don't know what goes behind closed doors. You don't know how much work that person has put into whatever, that vacation that person went to. You don't know if that person has like 5 jobs and then, that person just takes 1 week off in the year and goes to a nice vacation. And also with money, like I feel like we all spend our money differently, right?
Yeah.
Some people like me, like I prefer to spend my money on coffee rather than like, I don't know, like eating out or buying I don't know, Louis Vuitton purse or something like that, right? I'd rather spend my money on coffee because that's what I enjoy. But other people might rather just, make their coffee at home or like not drink coffee and buy themselves, an expensive purse or whatever. Everyone allocates their money differently. So that's another thing. Like I don't really judge people, about how they spend their money because you don't know their spending habits.
Yeah. And, with my oldest being 17, we've had lots of conversations about him, like the possibility of him getting a car. And we made him work the last few summers. Like, we're not in a position to just give you a car. And even if we were, we don't know that we would do that. Like, you need to earn things. You need to work for them so that you can, have a sense of pride. And, I think there's just a different connection between a kid who works for his own car and a kid who is given a car. And we live in an area where these brand new drivers are driving around in way nicer cars than I drive around in. And it's like, again, I don't judge, but it's like, again, you don't know, like maybe they have car payments out the wazoo. Maybe that's, maybe they have an extra car just because they paid one off early. I have no idea. But it's just funny because now it's not just me anymore. Now my kids are noticing like what their friends have access to versus either what we have or what we choose to provide them with. So we have lots of conversations about money and lifestyle and, different kinds of jobs that will support those lifestyles, either by way of how much you work or how much you make, how much money you make, or how much flexibility you have with your time to do the things that bring you joy.
Yeah. I was going to say about that car comment. You don't know if, the friend is driving a nicer car because the parent is able to afford that, but because the parent feels guilty for not spending the quality time, with their kid. Because some parents do that. Some parents try to compensate, the time that they don't spend with their kids with material things.
Yeah, we see that. We can see that a lot.
Yeah. So what advice would you give, to that girl that might be listening to this podcast, and she's also a teen mom? She's either about to give birth or she's in her, still in her early stages of, being a teen mom.
I would say number one by far is to find a community. I know we've talked a lot about, the damaging effects of social media. But I think that social media is such a gift because it provides a lot of access to a lot of people that you would not otherwise have access to. And so again, I'm going to put a quick disclaimer that social media can be a very dangerous place because there are a lot of people who are very adamant about the best way and the only way to parent your children. But there are also a ton of groups, whether it's, Facebook or otherwise, that are way more welcoming and understanding and more empathetic, and will provide you with, more reasonable guidance and a lot less like judgment.
Yeah. I would add to that to be careful on those sites or those accounts on social media where they tell you how to parent your kid versus a community like how, the one that you're describing, a community where, everyone's sharing their experience, and then you take what you want from those experiences, and not, oh, you have to do this, you have to do that, and to be a perfect mom, this is the list you have to do. No, because every parent is different, every kid is different. So even within, your own kids, like you have 3 kids, right? And I'm sure you have to modify for each kid how you parent them, because it's not a one size fits all.
Exactly. Yes. I'm a huge fan of, take what works for you and forget everything else. There is no one perfect way to do anything in life, but especially parenting. And, another thing that I'll say too is, just as you are starting to like get a hang of things and, get a routine and understand your kid and how they work, and you're in a groove, they're going to hit a growth spurt, or they're going to hit a different developmental stage, and you're going to start this process all over again. Yep. And it can feel really frustrating, like you're never getting it right. And it's not that you're not getting it right. It's just that you're constantly having to relearn each other. Because as your child is developing, so are you. You're also changing and growing and developing. And so, just giving yourself a lot of grace and knowing that you are doing the best that you can. The fact that you're even listening to this podcast right now shows that you care and you're doing the best that you can. And that's enough.
Yeah, I agree. Do you have a song, a word, quote, Bible verse, something that inspires you or keeps you motivated on those days that you just feel like giving up?
Yes. This year, my kind of mantra has been, you are in a growth season, and growth is uncomfortable. So every time I feel like I'm at my wit's end, or feeling just very frustrated with things that are going on around me that are outside of my control, I just remember, you are in a season of growth. There is something in this to be learned. Just hang in there. So that's been my most recent mantra.
I like it. I think, we're always growing, right? We're always learning and growing, and allowing yourself to do that. It's great. And, I guess just having that mentality, it prevents you from having a lot of frustration.
Yeah. I still have the frustration. That's why I have to remind myself.
So thank you for sharing your journey. And where can we find you? Where can we find more of your journey? Where can we find your podcast? Follow you on social media? Like where can we find you?
Yeah. So you can listen to my podcast, Unlocking Your Ambition, wherever you listen to this podcast. And I mostly hang out on Instagram. So it's at Megan.Eddinger on Instagram. Find me there, slide into my DMs, let me know, that you listened to this interview, and I'd love to chat with you over there.
Yeah. And I'll have all those links in the show notes. So go and follow her. Thank you so much, Megan. Thank you for being brave and sharing your story, on being a teen mom. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this episode inspired you. If you like this podcast, please share on social media and tag me on Instagram @TheBraveandHer. I would love to hear your stories of bravery.